Welcome to Pachamama Sacred Paths podcast. This podcast was created with the purpose of informing and sharing ancient ancestral wisdom relating to shamanism and sacred plant medicines, as well as other modalities of spirituality. Our mission is to share a safe and reverent understanding for anyone who is interested in healing and growing through shamanism, sacred plant medicines, Hinduism, and silence. If you would like to experience firsthand the pragmatic transformation that shamanism has to offer, please visit our retreats page, pachamamasacredpaths.org, at asimo.org, or you can click on the link appearing on the screen or go to the comment section below.
Hello everyone, welcome. This is Pachamama Sacred Paths podcast. This is our third episode and we want to welcome you. My name is Andres Villa.
And I'm Sabrina.
And today we have a very exciting podcast. I really can't say it's my favorite because I love them all. Mm-hmm. But this has been so personal to me. It's very, very close to my path. And so we're going to talk about the sacred medicine of Padre Sapo. And we're going to talk a little bit about everything, a little bit about what it is, about the molecule itself, where it comes from, a little bit of the history, and then some personal experiences. Some of the reasons why it has started to be a little bit more mainstream. And we hope you enjoy this. So, would you like to start?
Absolutely. So as we talk about, in the last episode we talked about the sacredness of these medicines. And so one of the credits I think we want to really focus in on is the benefits and the spirituality of the medicine.
100%,
so specifically, you can chemically create something like in a pharmacy or in a chemistry lab. You can create something that looks a lot like the Bufo.
Right.
But we want to talk a little bit about where it naturally comes from, mm-hmm. and the spirit of that, and the energy that comes along with that natural source.
I do. I think that's the focus, mm-hmm. the right focus. And but before we get into that, I think so to understand where it comes from, all mm-hmm. this experience, the Bufo Alvarius is a toad that lives and exists in the Sonoran Desert in Mexico, and it is called the Sonoran Desert toad, or also it is known as a Colorado River toad. And so this is a toad that comes in the monsoon seasons to, mate and reproduce, and that's when the natives of the areas have some contact with them, so that they can then benefit from the medicines, right? So they have some glands back here. It's pretty big, bulges of the neurotoxins, and it gets squeezed gently. They don't really harm the toad in the process, and so when it's squeezed, it feels like the bulge has maybe a couple hundred different pores, and so it doesn't matter where you squeeze from. It comes in all directions. It just shoots everywhere. And, it has been reflected about that process, about how multi-directional and how diverse and dynamic, mm-hmm. It is. But without getting into much of that, it is then what happens is then we have an experience of the medicine. It is a little bit like a gooey texture. Resin, and then it dries up, mm-hmm. and that's what it's then consumed. Again, here when we're talking about consumption and the experience, we want to make a clear point that this is not something that we're advocating for. We're not really advertising the sale of. We don't sell any medicine, and we're not advertising or encouraging anyone to have this experience. This is just for the mere purpose of informing, and trying to inform people so that there's a stigma that it can be removed, and encourage people to do their own research. And if this is something that they might resonate with, mm-hmm. That's at that point that'll be their choice, right?
And I think that one of the things too is that don't go out and try to milk a toad. There's been Please. Some. I think the Bufo Alvarius toad was, it's been farmed. I'm not sure what the term is, but I've read that there's been some overuse.
Right. I mean, there's some there's definitely some ideas out there that are, it is and we're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to right relationship, right? And what is the kind of relationship that we hold with the toad? So here, one of the things, if we start to talk a little bit about the history, we see that this is a medicine that has been around in the planet. The records that I've seen, it's
8th century, and found in a shaman's bag in 8th century Peru, I think it was.
I think it was Chile.
Was it Chile?
Chile.
And then you have the fact that it was, in the Tree of Life Church from the 70s and the 90s, one of their sacraments.
All the way through the 90s,
yeah. The 70s, 80s, and 90s,
right,
yes.
Right.
Yeah. And it was sacred medicine for that church, and it had been for, a lot of the Americas for a very long time.
Right,
yep.
Right. And so here we find that it has been, it's not something new.
Mm-hmm.
It's been around. And not only is not something new, it's something that is abundant. We find like you mentioned, we find these 5-MeO-DMT in nature abundantly.
Everywhere.
Chaliponga, Yopo, Changa, and a few other, the Amazon is filled with these, natural components, right? And like we spoke last time in the podcast last week about how every sacred plant medicine has a function and a purpose, then we see that specifically Padre Sapo, it has a predominant energy and in a very, very specific vibration that we can connect to, right? And so I think this is one of the reasons, it's so profound that it's one of the reasons why it's starting to become a little bit mainstream. Because you see like Mike Tyson,
Joe Rogan is talking about it all the time.
Right.
Brian with was it the London Reel?
London Reel.
Yeah.
And so there's and those are like some of the main ones, right? But if you just type, you're gonna find a ton of different, smoking toad with a shaman in the jungle and things like that.
Yeah, the subreddits on it are just endless.
Yeah. And it is something to pay attention to. It's becoming mainstream, and it's becoming so, a little bit more socially accepted beyond the stigma of drugs,
right?
Because it's the experience what counts, right? And so people having this experience, it is very profound, very, very profound, life changing, and
we wonder how is it so life changing?
I think that's what we should reflect a little bit about that, understanding in which ways it's profound. And so, are you open to sharing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of my most my first experience with Bufo was, you walk into a ceremony, a sacred ceremony, and you have certain expectations. It's been called the God molecule, and maybe caught a couple of words from Joe Rogan or Mike Tyson on what to expect, and it just blows your mind, and you're blasted off to another universe. And first and foremost, everyone's experience with any one of the sacred medicines is going to be unique and different, not only for each person, but for each experience a person has with the medicine. It's going to show something new or different, or a different perspective. So pretty much all of my experiences have shown me things that are barriers, those walls that we kind of talked about last time, some walls that I may have put up around me. And that's been one of the most clear sessions I've had with Bufo. Was the very first experience I had. Really just enlightening about my lack of desire to express, right? That I was holding in a lot of expression and felt really uncomfortable with that expression of emotion. And that was unique to me. And it was extremely powerful and profound, this fear that I have of expression that just came, and that's all Bufo told me. That, and we talk about the medicine talking to us. You hear that a lot in ceremonies where you're discussing the medicine talking to you.
Right.
And that's back to Kausai, where you give it you give it that existence, you give it that life, you accept that it is alive, and honor that life. So as I talk about my experience with Bufo, that's the messages that I get from that medicine have always been around or about the blockages that I have. What's standing in my way of really being that being at one with myself, being free with my expression. And the first one was emotion. Another session was the boundaries that I put up around accepting other people and their truth, and really just accepting what's around.
It's a big one.
It is, right? And
very social.
My goal in life is to see the divinity in all things and all people, and Bufo really walks you down that path very effectively with highlighting, illuminating some of the things that are blocking your path from that.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as the beginning of a dissolution of illusions. And if you're ready for it, it will start to help you dissolve your own illusions. It's not going to dissolve them for you.
Right.
And that's really, what's in my way. It's that clarifying aid. What's in my way, and then you still have to go figure out how to change those habits.
100%.
You still have to go figure out, well, this pattern is coming out sideways. So if I'm newly learning how to express my emotions without lashing out at people, or if I'm learning to accept my sadness, or I'm learning to accept my feelings of inadequacy and really work through those, Bufo kicks it off. But I still have to do the work.
It's the path of true humility. Yeah, and it is important to recognize that it is not for everyone. Some people have a little bit more of a hard time coming to terms with what is, and really accepting very, very clearly what is it that I feel, and how do I feel about myself. How do I feel about myself? Because this is a self knowledge type of journey, right? All of the medicines really just show you. They give you glimpses of different aspects of yourself. It's just a mirror into your inner reality. And so when Bufo is experienced, it is an experience of absolutely everything. All of my subconscious levels. And so, for me personally, the first time that I did it in San Jose with a shaman lady that I used to work with for a little bit, and I had a sort of exorcism. I was completely conscious through the whole time. It's not like I was possessed, but what I was feeling flowing, what people were looking at. Is like, holy cow, what the fuck is going on with Andres, And so I remember that I was fully conscious, but there was this really heavy roughness flowing through. And it was, I remember I was like being held by two guys at that time. That ceremony was like standing up. And so they had me standing up, and I was, just experiencing a super intense flow, and I understood that everything that I was experiencing was me, 100%, everything. And there's no other time that it's different than that. It's always we're experiencing ourselves. This is what we explain, and some of the knowledge points that we cultivate in the church is that we are at the center of our own universe. So we experience everything that we experience is some aspect that has been neglected, rejected, some sort of subconscious trauma, subconscious beliefs that are not in alignment, all of it, right? So I was experiencing my roughness, against myself. All of the self-judgment. I had a lot of self-hate, back then. And even though I never really liked to think that I hated myself, I disliked myself consciously. And then the feeling was of like, the some of those, a little bit of the hate, and hate sounds really rough, right? But it is a complete dislike and an aversion to aspects of ourselves,
which then you see kind of reflected in how you see other people and how you see the world.
100%.
Yeah.
And so not only I dislike me because of that, I dislike my boss.
And I dislike everybody that's like me. And
And then I saw people that were like cocky and because I didn't accept that aspect of myself, I'm like that's just a fucking egocentric guy. Putting myself as like, I am not like that. So a lot of like, a lot of reflection about all of that. But in the moment, I really didn't understand. So it took me a while of exploration and a lot of these type of processes to understand, like until finally something clicked in, and that's when that clicked. At the same moment, it's divinity is so synchronistic, and everything's in connection. Time is just a medium for connection, and so when I finally started to understand that there's a pattern in the processes, regardless of who and where at what time, regardless if I fasted, regardless of all of the circumstances that I wanted to change so that my experience was a harmonious one, it was always the same. It was always this roughness, until little by little started to awaken that there's something there, and it was the way that I felt about it. Right, that was just being completely expanded, and what I would find is like a very expanded version of this harmony, and so that was my the moment when the Kero came to me, the Kero tradition, right? It was my agreement with waking up from making my life circumstantial or making my life dependent of something, outside of myself. And so then we start to see that everything that I feel, everything that I carry, and what I experience in Bufo is a reflection of my agreements. So I have an agreement with viewing myself, like for example, if I am in a fight with my sexuality, right? Because I hold in time that maybe I had, 10 years of watching porn, or if I have, I hold within myself that I've been angry and I've yelled and I've hurt other people's feelings, right? And so at some level, you know that you're harming, something like this. There's, even though in the moment, emotion might take the best out of you and you get upset, things like this, there is an aspect of yourself that you feel there's like a pinch, right, in your energy that says, there should be, there must be something better, right? And so for me, it was holding on to that judgment that was, feeling out, flowing out in those moments. And so this is one of the things, one of the reasons why we say that this is not for everyone, because it could be potentially, chaotic and traumatic. We've known people that it's too much of a shock, of a dissociation from what I understand life to be than what it really is once we tap into these more expanded versions of ourselves.
It hits the ego really hard,
very
hard, and just nearly shatters what the ego believes is you, right? Is your the definition of who you are. All of these paradigms that you believe about yourself. Shatters them.
Through those experiences of creating some contrast with the experience, right? I've always, after all of that used to flow, and the heaviness and the roughness through the process, some crying, some grief, and very profound sense of just releasing emotion, whether it was heavy, harsh, or grief. It's been a process of releasing, letting all of those aversions and those self-inflicting tendencies that we sometimes have against ourselves because of belief, right? Because of beliefs.
And the way the message, I guess, has come for me, and it's been a little bit different every time. The first experience was very clear that I just, the release of emotion was necessary in order for me to move beyond and see what I was looking to see in myself.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but at that point you had already gone through ministry work, right?
I'd been years and dedicated to self-exploration and understanding how I felt about the divine, and
so you had already some understanding.
Right, I already kind of dug in and sort of knew what some of those things were that were standing my way. I already knew that I had issues with expressing emotion. Right, I was ready. And then in, later engagements with Bufo, I, was shown ways that I focus only on, things that are dark and and that I reject them, right? I focus on them and I reject them at the same time.
Yeah.
I go right to these heavy things, the hucha, and I focus on them, and I'm like, I gotta fix it, or I completely reject it. And we talk about that a lot. How we have this tendency to want to go to the Pollyanna and find all the butterflies and unicorns and rainbows, that life is great.
Love and light.
And so one of my experiences with this particular medicine was. Don't forget about the dark side, and embrace that and accept it and give that existence. That's Kausai as well. It was a moment of confusion, but at the same time, I was ready for it.
You were ready.
Yeah.
You were ready. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of people, they're really, we understand that it's sometimes a little bit more beneficial to begin with Mother Ayahuasca, rather than jumping in, because one of the things that is said, it's really impossible to gauge and to put into these type of understandings, but you hear that it's anywhere between 4 to 10 times more profound and intense than Mother Ayahuasca. So if you haven't done Mother Ayahuasca, begin slower, right? It's like don't, take the class of skydiving before just jumping out of the plane, type of thing, right? So it is important to that, and it's something that you've mentioned quite a bit as well, is not to do it without a guide.
Right.
Always have a reverence to the process, and
making sense of what you're experiencing in the medicine is pretty important, and can be difficult to do without guided experience of some kind. So you can sit down with medicine, and I can have any of those experiences where I my ego and all of me expands, and I start have different understandings of the cosmos and existence. But we talk about this too, that it's so important to engage with people and have discussions about your experience.
Integration.
100%. Yep, and that's where the guides come in how to integrate, what to integrate, what to making sense of what you're
one of the things that was for me in completely paramount in being responsible with my integration is having a perspective that is beneficial, right? Because I could be integrating a whole bunch of conjecture that it's ultimately not serving me. If you want to put it in the big picture type of scale, you always whatever experience is learning, right? It doesn't matter if it's a difficult experience or a positive one, but there's a strong, very profound benefit in understanding the perspectives of Hinduism, understanding the perspectives of A Course in Miracles, understanding the perspectives of the Keto tradition, and not only understanding but really experiencing them to see what is it that resonates with you. Right? We might have a tendency to a little bit more devotional type of unfolding, right? Which is the Hindu path. Devoting to some of the principles. When you study them well, they're one and the same with the Keto,
right?
But it is a different type of language, and so it is sort of like understanding existence from a different perspective, right? From the perspective of like, okay, so there's Shiva that destroys, and that's a part of creation, that's a part of existence, and then there's Brahman, the whole. So the in my experience, what was very, very helpful after using this particular sacred medicine, and I was doing initiations and courses and silence and a few years, many years of Hinduism. For me personally, what I found a little bit more practical and pragmatic, something that you can actually apply and experience as you understand it, was the Keto, which is what we cultivate and what we share in some of the services that we
and I love that tangibility that the Keto brings. I mentioned that I'd been in this spiritual practice and exploration for years,
right?
And being introduced to the tangible and physical engagement that the Keto brings into your something as simple as a prayer being made real in front of you, and then you engage with it and you connect with it, and then you dispatch it. It's not just a matter of, oh God, please save me, but it's an engaging physical activity that you can look back and you have a physical memory of that tradition. I love that about the Keto and Hinduism as well.
Real. Yeah, yeah, I did enjoy for a long time doing the japa mala, with, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and tuning into, right, and then being able to experience this in a tangible way, destroying, taking conscious approach and taking a conscious choice of destroying those things. Destroying sounds a little bit harsh, but you know what I mean. Like releasing myself from those things that no longer serve me.
One of our friends likes to call, is it Vishnu is the god of destruction?
Shiva,
the master garage sailor, right? It's never destruction, right. It's just
transformation.
Yes, it's recycling it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it has been for me, personally, I've had a personal connection with, redundant as you can be. I've had a personal connection with it where, I experienced a very tangible and direct communication with it, with the spirit, and I had a somewhat of an invitation, to work. It presented to me in a very profound initiation ceremony with Mother, Mother Ayahuasca, many years ago. And as I'm going through my initiation with Mother Ayahuasca, I think we're in the third ceremony in that retreat, and as I'm having the medicine, then it comes, here comes Padre Sapo, and it's obviously nonverbal communication, but the communication was that, it's like, I am here, are you here?
Mm-hmm.
It was like an agreement to continue. And then ever since that happened, like things have taken shape personally in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it is this is something personal that I share with everyone that is interested to know at what level you can start having communion, because in my opinion, in my experience, everybody has an opportunity to have this. Everybody has an opportunity to have communion, not only with the medicine itself and have an experience and wow, it changed my life, and now I understand life. Okay, but there's a little bit more profound levels of having communion in a relationship with this and with all medicines, right? With all medicines, and we come back to understanding Aini. In our past circle, we had a friend of ours who was part of the community that was asking, how can we be in right relationship with something that alleviates my life in every way at such levels? He was very reverent after his process of how beautiful this was, how amazing and transformational and life-giving this medicine can be. And he was asking, he's also part of the initiation group, and so he's been already exposed to the understandings of Aini, of right relationship, and so he was asking, like, how can I be in right relationship, and it was such a beautiful question, because the recognition that we feel good from it, it's only half of the equation. We benefit of it, of course, right? But that is just a glimpse. Just like with every medicine,
right?
It's just a glimpse of our alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to put our alignment, something that is natural, that is our essence, that alignment to self, to our own understanding of God, and to your own God within, to put that and make it dependent on Padre Sapo or Mother Ayahuasca, as sacred as they are, we have to revere our own sacredness as well, our own divinity. And so to put this this value of connecting to myself and connecting to my essence in outside of myself, it creates that imbalance that he was asking about. How can I maintain myself in right relationship? And these are the questions that we want to be very mindful for, so that there's not an abuse, right? We don't experience an imbalance and an abuse with any sacred plant medicine or any sacred medicine like Bufo, right?
And I appreciate about a lot of the sacred medicines, but we're talking about Bufo and you were talking about it. I guess the way I look at it is it gives you a view into what is possible for how you can feel, You know, you don't necessarily. I mean, there's plenty of states of mind. Meditation can get you there. Mindful practices. You know, nice clean diet with yoga and all of those things. You can get there. Yeah. And I remember someone at one of our retreats asking, like, you know, is any of, you know, do we even need to do any of the, do we even need to take any of these medicines? The answer is no. Absolutely not. There are plenty of gurus who dedicate their life to breath work, and they get it just as much as we do. And it's not even that it's faster or slower or anything like that. It's just there are many paths to achieve that connection with yourself, connection with your divinity.
It's one of the things that I like about shamanism, the history of shamanism, how, you know, the shamans in the Indian regions, right? They had breath work just like regular shamans do, and then they had plant medicine, and I think they used to have soma.
Yes,
that was what they used to ingest
in the Rig Vedas is in the
right. And so there's one of my old teachers. He you know, very very well connected. He shared with me that soma was Amanita muscaria, right? Which we'll have an episode about.
Yep.
And so then the Buddha time came, and this was something that Team Lechuga shared with us about how when that came, on those times, they basically said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So it's like the control, right? And so they banned sacred medicine. They said, like, shamans and gurus, they cannot do sacred plant medicine. No more soma, no more hallucinogenics. And so the gurus is like, okay, we'll do some asanas then. We'll do some breath work then, right?
And breath work is incredibly,
so they developed so much the science of breath, you know, which we'll have another episode about.
Yes.
And it's so powerful. So yeah, even though we're dedicating, you know, the next, you know, couple of months in talking about sacred plant medicine, it is one way. It is just one pathway that we ourselves will resonate with because of getting in tune with our nature in such a way, such a powerful way. But we'll also talk about a few other means and mediums to connecting to ourselves, and really more than just connecting is understanding that prompt and that promotes self-knowledge, right? Self-awareness.
And sometimes that's, you know, when I have people ask me about the Bufo experience, you know, and you have to give up quite a bit in your diet. If you're eating a standard American fare, you know, then you usually want to minimize that down to pretty much a vegetarian diet, a fairly clean, natural vegetarian diet.
Yeah, the jungle they fast.
You know? And you know, people ask, like, is it worth it? And I said, well, I don't. You know, would it be worth it to meet yourself for the first time? You know, and that's really what it feels like. You meet yourself with all of those paradigms just gone.
I have a friend who is also in the path of shamanism. His name is Pepe Barros. He lives, I believe, in East Coast. I can't remember exactly what city he lives, but he's actually part of the Keto cosmology too, the Keto tradition, and he considers, you know, Bufo to be the guardian of the cosmos. That powerful, you know. So when you think about it, the guardian of the cosmos is, you know, God itself. You know, and so meeting that aspect of you, which is one with that, with the whole, it is quite a life-changing experience that, you know, can help you move in the direction that you want. If you know you want to experience spirituality in a more embodied way, I do think that the breathwork pathway, if you're ready, it can be. But for me personally, I benefited so much from it, really, but it never really helped me transform some of the energies in a way that I could appreciate. Like, oh, this is happening right now. This is really an understanding very clearly some of the blockages that I was holding on to. Right? It was.
I mean, how many times do you have people come out of their initial experience or even a secondary experience, and they're just like, "Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, oh, wow, I totally, I get it."
Yes.
Yeah, you know, and that's something that
the cool thing about it is that they hear the calling to go deeper. They come back and it's like, I didn't get it. I get it now. And then again and again.
Yep.
And it's a refreshment of spirit. It's, so beautiful. All sacred medicines are.
Yes.
Right? And so I think that's one of the reasons for me personally. What the profoundity gives way to is a sense of trust. And the trust is, I experience this trust in three ways. This is part of the Ashtavakra Gita, and it is something that we can really put into practice and experience, and it's the trust to myself, right? So the ego is not so erratic and so contracted. It's not so looking over its shoulder and fearful. It really grounds, the experience of Padre Sapo. It helps you remove it's a flow, right? You expand so much that you flow. So at the same time you're flowing, any blockages of energy that might be incoherent, root chakra areas, things like this. So it in such expansion, you have the opportunity to be safe, feel safe, and experience safety at a deeper level. So I trust myself, right? And I trust every aspect of myself, my vision, my expression, my heart, my connection to love, and my empowerment, my drive, and everything. So that's the first type of trust. The second type of trust that I experience is a trust in the collective, a trust in the world. And that's been the challenging one, because you're trusting that people criticizing or judging you, it's part of and obviously we want to understand, how is it that I need to trust that, right? Why do I need to trust that? If it feels so harsh that people are judging you or people are talking about you, we at some level we have these, all of us, when we really start to be honest with ourselves about how we feel. Some people really just like, no, I don't care. If they judge, they can judge. But when you connect to that feeling that it's yours, you really know that there is like an apprehension that we hold from when we were kids, of being judged and criticized. This is something very innate to our upbringing, to our beliefs, to the raw way that we feel. And so that trust in the collective is going beyond that, and then being true to the feeling of the vulnerability, right? That you can experience when you're being observed, and maybe you're going to be disliked. Maybe they're not going to like what you have to say. Maybe there's going to be viewers that said like, that fucking guy's a whack, and so being okay with those energies, and trusting that everybody's in the same path. I am in the same path, and then what comes is an understanding that I have something within myself that I am attracting that, right? That I am attracting. It is due to the fear and the trauma that the ego has experienced when it was a kid, is the unhealed, the wounds of the child, all of that. And so, trusting as a conscious choice in the face of all of that energy, that's the second trust that it has, grown with time with Padre Sapito.
And a big part of trusting is the ability, through all of your walls and paradigms and lenses, to assume positive intent.
100%.
Right.
And you can just, step back and expand your perspective. The big picture, how does it make sense in the big picture, right? And when you understand that, it's perspective is not so contracted. And this is the ego, right? From which standpoint are you relating to what's happening to you? And then the last one is trust in the Ashtavakra Gita is said as trust in something that you do not know,
right?
Which is the divine. Because to claim that I know what that is, it's not only puts limits and.
Well, and I think there's a difference between knowing and understanding, right? So you can know. I feel like there's a relationship we have with the divine that is a knowing.
Yes.
But to be able to articulate and understand in all levels,
It really does take surrender, and it never really ceases to amaze how synchronicity and divinity is far more intelligent than any human design can possess. It is starting gradually to dawn on people, that intelligence is something that is inspiration, that you're not generating it out of your brain. It's insight. It's in every moment you're tuning into yourself to receive that flow, which is infinite intelligence, and it's perfect love, right? Not attached love, not rejectful, not abrasive, not obsessive. It's a balance, and it's a balance in between those two, right? So trust in the divine, and trust that everything is unfolding in the way that it should, and that it is, and that clears a lot of our problems. It's like, okay, and just trust, trust. That is for me the main, one of the main things that comes every time that I have communion with others. Just that trust that everything is okay. Everything is 100% okay. That's the first one, and then the second one that shows up for me quite a bit is a relaxation into the trust. Which then what happens is, as I further relax into this trust that everything is okay, then I experience a what it is a conscious process of transforming the beliefs that I hold, right?
Yes.
And so I experience the maybe a little bit of apprehension. I experience a little bit of difficulty with any aspect, with maybe finances, with relationships, with whatever comes, right? And then as I relax in the trust that everything's okay, I understand. Right. And with the understanding comes the shifting of the beliefs.
Yes, and the ability to tangibly hold the habits that you have and shift them. And you identify the patterns, and you recognize how to change them, how to move through them. Yep.
100%. And so that's
both the mental loops and the physical habits. Right. So however it manifests.
Right. Right. And this is something that we need to understand. I mean, all of this, of course, the trust, the relaxation, and finally the self-acceptance. It comes from a lot of the studies, right? Of for me personally, of both Advaita Vedanta, the Hindu path, and the Keto. I would have saved some years have I started with the Keto cosmogony, and the practice of these sacred medicines at the same time. But it's 100% perfect. The contrast is needed, and it is an understanding of everything that has been in my past, absolutely everything. Some of the traumas that we might still carry, subconsciously.
Even if we don't want to.
Even if we don't want to see them or experience them, even if we don't like those, all of those are serving a purpose for me. And they're serving us, in many ways. So the realization of how that is, as I relax, into my understanding of trust, then my experience of trust, then yields to the insight of how is it that all of that has been a blessing.
And now, did we talk about the actual process of, at least that we've seen, of consuming sapito, the different? No,
we haven't. I mean, I've known a few different type of processes using different tools and the biohackers and consciousness hackers. They have like a recipe for temperature and when they're heating up the pipes and all of it is acceptable, right? Me personally, what I do is in the moment, it's a trust, the trust factor, and it's a complete being in tune with the feeling of what is needed in the moment, right? And that is also guided, many times. But there is inherently, the most traditional way to take this medicine, if you're having communion with sapito, of course, it's smoked. So it is smoked in a glass pipe, an oil burner, and it is an experience that lasts 10 to 20 minutes. 10 to 20 minutes. It is for anybody that is resonating with this. The suggestion is again to find a guide, to find someone that really understands and that has enough experience through the myriad of contrast that exists within these. Right, has done some of the work, some of the shadow work. You don't need someone enlightened, but just someone that is aware of safety, and then at the same time, someone that can really help you put into perspective what you go through. Right. So that is not a confusing or traumatic experience like there has been. There has been.
Very easily, the experience I had, one of the experiences I had with Bufo, where I went into Bufo, just looking to get to know myself a little bit better, and everything went dark. That could have been interpreted so many ways, but because I was
many of those too.
Right, but because I was with a guide and I was in a group and it was a community setting, it was a little easier to, like, hey, this is what my experience was, and get feedback and talk about what it meant to me and like what my experience was with it. Yeah, sitting in a room by yourself doing it, it's going to be a very confusing experience.
I think at the end of the day is understanding that this is a sacred process. If you have that understanding, whatever that means for you, right? without putting so much definition, when you feel and you tune into that this is a sacred process, because everything that it implies, everything that it does for you, both physical, mental, emotional levels, spiritual, of course, it is something to be done, not just like okay, I'm going to pop up a beer, and have a good time. This is something that should be respected in
given its own space.
And in my experience, is something that should be considered as something worthy of respect. And better yet, if you can understand it deeply and maybe you read a little bit about what the spirit of Padre Sapo is, right, and connect to those energies, so that when you go in, you go with that perspective of something that it's so beneficial, that it's with lack for a better word, is sacred. Sacred, to meet your own sacredness. And so
not just meet it and like shake hands with it,
right now, and
commune with it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the way to be in right relationship, right? It's with gratitude for the experiences that come from it,
and not trying to escape. But I think that's a big one. The not trying to escape is what helps maintain it. As a sacred medicine, you're not trying to escape from who you are, but you're trying to
100%. It really, if the whole path calls you, that's one of the things that I really enjoy and love about this, is that rarely does it allow you to, obviously with this understanding, right? It does allow you to fall into some type of mental jerk off, which is like the trying to brainwash yourself into that this is something that is not, right. This is the most expansive type of self-worth that I personally have experienced. So you can't really bullshit yourself.
No.
And this is one of the blessings of this, is like you will find everything that you hold, and as you hold it, it is going to show you also how you feel about that. So there's really no like, I'm going to have a great time. It's like, yes, of course, it is a beautiful, amazing, reverent, sacred time. But it is more profound than just recreational. That's basically what I'm trying
Absolutely.
to do.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So, a beautiful, I think, place to leave it. For Sapito, definitely, shoot us questions if you have anything that we can answer on it. We'll make sure that we respond in the chats. And next week, we're going to be diving into Mother Ayahuasca.
Right, for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We'll have some guest speakers and some people that have been with us in that they're now devoting their lives to Mother Ayahuasca. Just specifically to Mother Ayahuasca. And so we'll have some guest speakers next week to enlighten us a little bit about, inform us and give us some of the perspectives that are very natural, very, very in alignment with nature, right? To keep this focus into how is this reflected by nature. And so, after that we'll have a little bit of some of the other sacred medicines that are also in nature.
Yeah, we'll start with the big hitters, and then we'll get into the other medicines that are just as profound.
Bovinsana, Chiricsanango, some of the other ones. We'll bring them along.
Awesome. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being with us. Send you guys a big hug, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.